Hi, I'm Shadir.
Hello, I'm Wei.
Today, we're going to debate whether or not regulation is the best way to ensure ethical behavior in individuals and as well as corporations. I will act as student 1 and I will be representing from a perspective of regulation is the best way to ensure ethical behavior in both individual and corporations. Regulation is the best way to ensure ethical behavior. It is argued that the process of business, both domestically as well as internationally, should be guided by a set of rules and appropriate norms of ethical conduct. Considering the perspective of the country where the business process is undertaken, should be developed and properly implemented if the acceptable ethical standards and rules are to be achieved. Moreover, ethical behavior appears to be largely influenced by a range of factors such as law, social pressure, and government regulation. Although the best way to create an attitude within an organization is for the top leadership to set an example, sometimes in large companies that just isn't enough. As companies grow and the culture is shaped by an increasing number of people, ethics can become diluted. A code of ethics is one tool for achieving standards of ethical behavior from a business perspective. Some of the examples include training the employees of the importance of ethics and enforcing the rules and regulations and strictly following the regulations. Moreover, the government plays a pivotal role in the importance of ethics from both an individual perspective as well as corporations. It cannot be assumed that all business will behave ethically without enforcement of regulations, which is a fact. Examples may include legislative role, anti-competitive behavior can occur when large companies merge or take over, and when large organization has a very substantial market share or a monopoly, there is always the temptation and the tendency for it to act in an unethical manner, which will be detrimental to the public. The government must monitor and supervise such mergers, which are subject to antitrust law, to ensure that they are acting ethically and are not abusing a position of dominance. By doing this, the government would help to understand the importance of where the government plays for both individuals and as well as corporations. Another point I would like to raise is the cultural factors, which is another important rule. In my point of view, to be honest, culture is one of the most important factors that affects business ethics today. Different cultures have different set of rules which is needed to be followed. Some of the cultural differences in Australia and in China may differ from one another. But thanks to regulation, the foreign corrupt practices has dramatically reduced. An ethical framework practice should be followed when doing business with two countries which does not exploit the business and as well as consumers, both domestically as well as internationally. Moreover, with regulations, some of the anti-competitive practices has been reduced as well as corruptions. If heavy fines are imposed for those anti-competitive practices, many organizations from different cultural background would behave more ethically in the business world. Examples would include not polluting the environment, not exploiting the individual income, etc.
In my point of view, regulation is not the best way to ensure ethical behavior in individuals and corporations. To clarify, I'm going to illustrate my point of view by differentiating and demonstrating the fundamental purpose and differences of regulations and ethical behaviors. In addition to this, I'm going to explain why that regulation is not the best way to go about by interpreting from the perspective of individuals and corporations, as well as the influence that it will have on a multicultural context. First of all, regulation is not the best way. That is because it would contradict the nature, the degree, and the purpose of both regulation and ethics. Let's look at the purpose and differences in regulation and ethics. According to the dictionary, and in case of this scenario, the word regulation can be explained as a minimal standard that individuals and corporations will need to follow religiously. However, ethics are more flexible and also more extensive and broad in extension and degree. Additionally, let's move on to the purposes of both regulations and ethics. Regulations are created with an intent to maintain corporations' order and also to regulate the corporation and its people to perform in specific ways with specific manners. However, ethics are made to help people to decide what is morally right or wrong and how to act. More importantly, violation of regulation is not permissive, which may result in punishment and consequences. However, there's no such punishment or violation of ethics. Furthermore, from the perspective of individuals and corporations, is it really necessary to enact regulations to enforce ethical behavior? According to the study of human behavior, the answer has to be a no. Professor Craig claims that people behave ethically is not only because of avoiding the punishment from not behaving ethically, but also because of the human nature. He demonstrates that is one of the human natures that people behave ethically to preserve good relationships with other people and the environment. However, people also behave ethically to earn credibility and respect from others. For instance, we respect our neighbors, our colleagues, and our peers by behaving ethically and kindly is not because the law says so, but is because the nature of us wants to be respected and treated in the same way. And the same logic also applies to corporations. Therefore, regulation is not the best way. Last of all, regulation is not the best way to ensure ethical behavior, and the reason for this is that because it would be very complex to unify a code of rules or regulations that can apply to all individuals and corporations in a globalized commercial context. For instance, countries who are like Australia has a multicultural background will have different ethnicities, and different ethnicities will have different values, norms, and standards for ethical behavior. Hence, ethical behavior shall differ from individual to individuals and corporation to corporations. Therefore, it would contradict and dilute the culture of multicultural country if it enacts regulations to ensure ethical behavior. Then I'll pass it to my group partner.
I would like to argue some of the points which my friend raised. First of all, starting with the legislating role. Some degree of legislation is very important to ensure that business comply with their ethical obligations and the public does not suffer as a result of dishonest business practices. Rules aim to prevent the practice such as bribing, planning, authorities to circumvent planning and zoning laws. Another point I would like to argue is from the regulations and the importance of regulations. As from a consumer's perspective or an individual's perspective, there should be a level of professionalism introduced when they sell a product and marking a price on top of that. Acting on a consumer interest with regulation, ethical behavior of businesses and corporations can be limited to a larger extent, which is the primary role of regulations to help and prevent and safeguard individuals and corporations.
Thank you. I want to argue that legislation is not necessary, neither the best way to ensure business and individuals to comply with their ethical obligations. That is because there are better ways that government and corporations can go about to ensure individuals and companies behave ethically. For instance, government can reward corporations who have done a good job throughout the year by rewarding them. Corporations can also provide their employees with ethical learnings. For instance, corporations can provide individuals with ethical training and development to ensure individuals' awareness of behaving ethically. Furthermore, corporations can establish policies that reward individuals for their ethical behaviors, such as rewarding whistleblowers and so on and so forth. I believe in this way, corporations and individuals will be motivated by those incentives. Therefore, there will be initiative to behave ethically rather than being passive following the legislations because they have to.
Yep, thank you. In conclusion, we both would like to sum it up. In some degree, it is necessary to establish legislations to ensure individuals and corporations to behave ethically. However, in some degree, this can be argued, and there is no true correct answer whether regulations is the best way to address the ethical behavior from both business perspective as well as individual perspective. Thank you for listening.